Everyone on the training field thought they knew exactly who they were looking at, a woman too quiet, too calm, and far too ordinary to ever be a threat. But when the former SEAL candidates laughed and said she'd miss every shot, when they whispered, "Bet us? She won't even hit the board," everything changed. Because the woman they underestimated stepped up to the line, raised the rifle without a tremble, and hit 5 bullseyes, one after another, without blinking. Not because she needed to prove anything to them, but because she had already survived battles none of them could imagine. This is her story. Cassidy Hale arrived at Red Ridge Survival Camp with nothing more than a faded duffel bag and a silence heavy enough to unsettle anyone who stood near her. The camp was a place where veterans, thrill-seekers, and hopeful recruits trained side by side. Nobody there knew Cassidy's past, and she preferred it that way. The recruits joked when she walked in. She didn't look like the type to break bones or survive nights in frozen mud. She looked like someone who spent her afternoons reading in warm cafes, not crawling through combat zones. Her eyes, however dark, steady, and unreadable, hinted at a world she carried inside her. But people rarely noticed eyes when they judged. Cassidy kept to herself, listening more than speaking. Some days she watched the others push themselves to exhaustion, other days she trained alone, quietly repeating drills she had perfected years before the rest of them ever learned how to hold a rifle. She didn't need attention. She didn't need praise. She only needed motion. Movement kept the memories from catching up. The instructors noticed, of course. A few had known SEALs like her, people who wore trauma like a second skin but kept walking anyway. They didn't ask questions. They just gave her space. Everything changed the day recruits challenged her during marksmanship practice. They were loud, brash, eager to impress each other. When the instructor mentioned Cassidy had a military background, the group snickered. Someone muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Bet she couldn't hit center if the target was kissing her barrel." Cassidy didn't react, but something old and aching twisted in her chest, memories of a battlefield where hesitation cost lives, where she stood shaking after losing someone she cared about, where she had promised to never freeze again. The instructor raised an eyebrow. "Cassidy, you care to show them?" She didn't respond with bravado. Didn't puff her chest. She simply stepped forward, almost reluctantly, as if the challenge was more of a burden than a competition. The recruits laughed again, nudging each other, whispering their bets. Cassidy picked up the rifle, light, familiar, almost nostalgic. She inhaled once. The world fell silent. One shot. Bullseye. Second shot. Bullseye. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Bullseyes, each one slicing cleanly through the center. She never blinked. The field went dead quiet. The recruits stared at her like she had defied human limits, not understanding that she had once performed under far worse conditions: rain pouring, heart racing, bombs thundering, teammates screaming. Cassidy lowered the rifle, expression unchanged. She didn't do it to humiliate them. She did it to remind herself she was still alive. And that was only the beginning of why she came to Red Ridge Survival Camp. She wanted something she had lost long before: purpose. But purpose, she would learn, doesn't return without a fight. The camp wasn't just about physical endurance, it forced people to confront whatever ghosts they dragged behind them. Cassidy had more ghosts than she admitted. After her display at the range, the recruits watched her differently. Admiration replaced mockery, but admiration wasn't what she wanted. Respect came with attention, and attention attracted questions. Cassidy avoided all of them. Late at night, while others joked around campfires, she sat alone at the edge of the forest staring at the sky. The stars reminded her of nights overseas, moments of fragile calm before dawn, missions she still heard in her dreams. Those missions had cost her more than she ever confessed. She lost a teammate, a brother in arms who had once pulled her out of a collapsing structure, laughing even as debris rained around them. She had promised she would return the favor someday. But someday never came. Cassidy left the SEALs not because she was weak, but because guilt had turned every heartbeat into an echo of failure. Red Ridge was her attempt at rebuilding. One evening, after a grueling obstacle course session, Instructor Marcus approached her. A former SEAL himself, he recognized pain when he saw it. "You're not here to train," he said gently. "You're here to heal." Cassidy stiffened. "I'm here to stay busy." Marcus didn't push, but his presence alone felt like a hand steadying her shoulders, reminding her she wasn't the first veteran to carry the unbearable. The next morning, the recruits were assigned a partner challenge. Cassidy was paired with Jordan, the loudest doubter from the rifle range. He was embarrassed but determined to prove himself. Through muddy ravines, steep hills, and freezing river crossings, Cassidy guided him without judgment. She taught him breathing techniques, balance, even mental focus, skills she had mastered long ago. Jordan realized she wasn't just skilled. She was someone who survived things that would have broken him in a second. When he finally said, "I'm sorry I underestimated you," Cassidy only nodded. Forgiveness wasn't hard for her, holding on to resentment required energy she didn't have anymore. As the challenge ended, Jordan said quietly, "You're here for something important, aren't you?" Cassidy hesitated. The words pressed against the inside of her chest like an unspoken confession. "I'm here to learn how to stop blaming myself," she finally whispered. And for the first time since her teammate's death, she felt the edges of healing, small, fragile, but real. The camp wasn't just pushing her body. It was forcing her to confront the grief she had buried so deep she forgot it was there. But healing is a journey full of unexpected turns. And Cassidy was about to face the one test she had avoided her entire life, the moment where she had to choose between mourning the past or stepping into her future with strength. The recruits had seen her talent. Now they would see her heart. And only then would they discover the real reason she hit 5 bullseyes without blinking.